Hey everyone, Teacher Mike here, and we're going to take a look today at how to build a digital learning portfolio using a website. And we're going to be using Wix to create our website, which is a platform you can sign up for free and create and publish really incredible websites. So here we're looking at my example for my students in a pedagogy and technology class, where the final product of the class is this digital learning portfolio. So we can see up here in the URL that with the free version, the web address starts with the email that we've registered with, then it goes to a .wixsite.com and then the actual name of our website. Because, if we're not paying for anything, then Wix is going to add their name to the URL. Now, Wix does have an upgrade option where you pay a certain amount of money depending on your plan, and you get all kinds of upgraded features. You get your own domain, and the entire URL changes to just your domain name. So our learning portfolio is basically going to have three main parts. It's going to have a first part, which is sort of an introduction about the author. Here we can see a little bit about my background as a teacher, and then also an introduction to the narrative behind the class, which is teacher stories. I use this picture of people walking around just to kind of play into this narrative. And another big part of a learning portfolio is the actual showcase. So we're going to showcase the digital tools that we're learning in our pedagogy and technology class. Notice that I haven't edited anything on this page yet. And then we're also going to showcase the work that we do in class, and that will be through what we call a tasks page, which has a main page, and then each activity that we do in class will have a page of its own. And then the third big part of a learning portfolio is metacognition, reflection, where students share not only what they're learning, but how they're learning it, how they feel about it, how it's shaping them as a person. And we'll be doing this through a blog that I have not started yet either. So I'm going to close this tab and we'll head over to the editor, where we'll take a peek at this home page, the About Me page. I notice there's a spelling error right here. And you'll notice that text boxes are basically just word processors, and you'll see a lot of the same features that we can see in a Word file or a Google Docs. Now, I have these texts actually added to what is called a box, and you can insert text boxes and all kinds of elements from the Add Elements menu on the left here. And you'll see that we can add all different kinds of boxes. And then once we've added the box, you can actually personalize the design, customize the design, and you'll see that I've added some opacity to the background so that you can kind of see the picture behind it. And for example, these boxes have no border. It'll take some time for you to get comfortable with Wix and really get to know all the features and functionalities that it offers, which are a lot. But once you start playing around with them, you'll feel pretty comfortable fairly quickly. So like I said, the About page is just a brief introduction about who we are and where we come from. Now, at the top of the page, we have our header. Notice I have my alias or my nick, which is the same as my handles in social media. And at the bottom, we have the footer, where there's actually a reference to the author of the template that I picked when we created this website. Now, you can create websites from a blank page or use a template, which can kind of help. And I'm actually going to delete this, even though in general it's pretty good practice to leave it. But because I am pretty much eliminating everything except maybe the color palette and the text fonts, I kind of consider that as going to be more of my own work. Now, one last thing I want to do here is the social media bar. This is completely optional. If you are active on social media, especially on a more of a professional level, it might be a good idea to keep social media on your learning portfolio. But if not, you can remove it, no problem. I'm just going to drop it in down here. And if you do decide to leave it, all you have to do is set social links, and then you'll see that you can add, like, for example, I don't have Facebook, so I can remove that. I do have Instagram, and I do have Twitter, LinkedIn, so I'm going to add a couple of those real quick. And then it's really easy just to add a link to the actual profile, and you can decide if that opens in the current window, the new window. I'll do that later on. Let's move on over to the tasks page. Now, one really good practice when you're creating a digital learning portfolio, especially when it's done with a website, is that if it's public, then anyone on the internet might come across your portfolio. So it's really important, even though we're not going to have any actual tasks on this tasks page, but we do need some sort of information that's going to orient whoever's visiting our website as to what they can find on it. So I have this short little text here. I'll probably add an image and play around with this a little bit more. I just wanted to have a little demonstration. And then that takes us to the actual tasks page. So if we go to this gallery walk page, we'll see that we have the actual artifact itself, which was done with a Google Slides presentation, and then a little text talking about what exactly we did. So this part of the showcase is look at what we did and a little description to kind of contextualize this production. And this is going to be the same for all our tasks. If we go to the Bloom and the ICT page, notice that it is blank, but I do have the artifact. And the way we actually get this onto our portfolio and showcase it is we use the URL. So we can copy that, Control C, go back to the website editor, and from the Add Elements menu, we're going to add embed code, embed HTML. Now, it's really nice because nowadays you can actually use the iframe, the HTML code, and we could write this out if we wanted to, or we can just use a web address. And we can paste that in there, and when we apply it, we'll see that our artifact does in fact get embedded. And we can stretch that out. And notice that right now I don't have too much space on the actual page between the header and the footer. So what we can do is we'll actually just select the footer here, kind of move the mouse around until we see this cursor. And what we have to actually do is bring the cursor or that top border of the footer down, and that will allow us to have more page room where we can move things around and stretch things out. So before we move on, I do want to mention one thing about the Google environment, because see, we've embedded this spreadsheet, but we have all these menus, and you can see my account or my profile image. And that's because we actually copied the edit URL. So everything after this last backslash is kind of extra, right? And we can see that this is the editing version. If I change all of this information and remove it and type in preview and update that, then what we're going to get is more of a presentation style view of that content. In the public version, we will see that these scroll bars will actually work and be interactive because the file is actually embedded as an iframe into my website. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit more. Notice that as I drag things around, there's these guidelines that kind of tell me if it's centered or if it's touching up on one of the sides. Now, if you remember, I have the product, but I will need that little text kind of explaining what exactly the objective of the task was, what we used, and more kind of reflect on the actual tool itself. So when we do add text, I mean, we can add all these different headings. These headings, H1, H2, they're kind of used for SEO. So like you don't want an entire paragraph for a heading one. Heading ones are usually just kind of one-liners. We could say Bloom's taxonomy and ICT. Like I was saying, not only is the text just naturally bigger, but there's a term in web development called SEO, which different web browsers, especially Google, values different types of text. So like H1, H2, and paragraphs, and keywords and whatnot. And so this, I guess you could say, kind of influences on if your website is found easier or not. I mean, that's a very summarized comment about SEO, but that's kind of what it means. I mean, this is not the scope of the video. So I'm just going to add a paragraph text box just below it, and I'm going to put in a little reminder, remember to write about the activity. And as we go on, we will be adding a tasks page throughout the course. In my class, we actually showcase everything that we've done, and depending on the nature of a learning portfolio in general, you could work on your learning portfolio maybe like once a month or once a trimester or even once a year, and go through a process of selecting those productions or artifacts or learnings that you're most proud of or that you think are most representative of what you've learned and how you've grown as a person, and kind of showcase those. And that brings us to the last part of a learning portfolio, which is the reflection, the metacognition. So notice that with the tasks, we just kind of describe what exactly we did and the tool we used. And the blog, it doesn't have to be a blog. We use the blog just to kind of explore on a technological level what the difference between, using a blog and just adding text is. But these blog entries are meant to be very personal, very subjective. I mean, the tasks, they're going to be very objective, and the blog is a space where students can open up and talk freely about what they're learning, how they're learning it, and especially how they feel about it. So you'll notice here that we have these sort of like default example posts. They actually are not on the public version. They're just kind of here in the editor version, and you'll notice they're very meta. They have these little sentences to kind of motivate you about using the blog, but these will all just disappear once we actually create the first post. So to manage posts, then you're going to want to be on your blog page, and as we hover with the mouse, you'll see manage posts, and we can just create a new post. So you'll notice that, again, it's just kind of your standard text editor. We can add in pictures, GIFs, videos, galleries. There's the HTML code if we wanted. When we add an image, we can use images or files that we've uploaded or just media from WIX. So I'm going to look for maybe off to the races. This one looks pretty good. It's kind of a sentimental and motivational type image. We can put in the title, say something like off to the races. And then we can just start writing. Now, a lot of times if students aren't used to talking about their learning and reflecting about their learning, or even blogging for that matter, this activity on its own can be a little disorienting. I get a lot of students who just write, kind of a summary of what we did in class. And that's not what I want, because, I obviously was in class, and I want more than just to read about what we did in class. I want students to talk about how they felt about it, what impact it may have in their teaching or in their learning. I want it to be very, very, very subjective and very personal. It can even be, criticism or reflections and thoughts that, do not have to have a positive connotation towards what we're doing in class. This is the space for students to be real, as I say in class. So I'm actually not going to write this post now. I will probably when we're done with this video. I'll go ahead and publish that. It'll give you some options to actually copy the published link or publish it directly to social media, which can be nice. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram, it'll have just this kind of generic message that you can actually edit, but it will have a nice thumbnail that takes visitors to your post on Wix. Now, one thing that's super important before we go is that anytime you make changes, notice all those default posts just kind of disappeared. But I was saying, anytime we make changes, save those changes. And I kind of tried to make changes that I'm comfortable with publishing in the moment, because if we don't actually publish those changes, then they won't be seen on the actual published version of the site. And you can always just kind of hover over this publish button and click on view site, and it will take you to the published version. Notice that now, we can see technology is spelled properly. We can go to tasks and see that, in effect, the file was embedded. And notice that these scroll bars, we can go from left to right, up to down. They work. And if we head over to the blog, we have that blog post. Before we go, there's one last little detail. I'm going to head over to Creative Commons, where we are going to put a Creative Commons license on our work. So we go to Licenses and Tools. And we're just going to want to choose a license. So this is just sort of kind of compliance, because Creative Commons licenses don't actually stand up alone on their court of law. Like if you don't have your work actually copyrighted, then you can't really get Creative Commons to back you up. However, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Creative Commons license. I guess we'll go through the steps. We'll go back. So we'll hit no. I need help. And it'll kind of take us through the steps by asking us questions. Do you want attribution for the work? Yes, anyone using my work must include proper attribution. You can either choose yes or no. And then we go on to another one. Would you allow others to use your work commercially? Again, yes or no. The answers to these questions are very personal. So feel free to create whatever license you feel most comfortable with. And we get a nice, we're going to get a nice little Creative Commons license, right? Which is Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0. And it gives you a little more detail about what this actually means. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy the HTML code. Now you can do this by selecting all the code, copy it, come back over to our editor, and it doesn't matter what page we're on because we're actually going to add this to the footer. So we'll go to embed code, and where last time we used the website address, now because we copied the actual iframe, the HTML code, we're going to use this option. So just paste that in there, and that looks pretty good. And we'll update it, and you'll notice that there's this little scroll bar there. So I'm just going to extend this down so that disappears. And also that, we can't see the text. So I guess a immediate little fix, I will change the strip background that we have here to a different color. And I will go with this yellow color. And I'll just close out of this menu to see if the social icons still are visible. This looks pretty good. The social icons being white on that yellow background, not so much. So again, I can just add a box. And what's nice is that Wix kind of saves the boxes you've already used. So notice that it's that kind of dark gray color with some transparency. And I'll just size that down. And I will grab the social bar and make sure that attached to box pops up, center it with those pink lines. And now if I drag the box around, the social icons will go with it. And I'll just line that up here on the right. And that looks pretty good. So again, you don't have to save and then publish. You can just hit publish, and it will do both. It will save and publish. And if we just refresh, we'll see that now we have our footer with the Creative Commons and the social icons in that box. And if we go to another page, because it is in the footer, it'll be seen all across the website. So hopefully this is enough to get you started with your learning portfolio. So enjoy, have fun.